Hello viewers, myself Pratap. Hope you are all well. This is the second video of the series on Macbeth. Before discussing the play in details, today we will deal about the brief summary of Macbeth. So, let's begin. The play starts with a scene where the three witches were planning to meet Macbeth. The famous quote of the witches, "Fair is foul and foul is fair," sets the theme of the play. When Duncan reigned as the King of Scotland, there lived a great thin Macbeth. He was a near kinsman to the king and in great esteem at court for his valour and conduct in the wars, an example of which he had lately given in defeating a rebel army assisted by the troops of Norway in terrible numbers. The two Scottish generals, Macbeth and Banquo, returning victorious from this great battle, were crossing a blasted heath, where they were stopped by the three weird sisters with strange appearance. Macbeth first addressed them. In return of this, they saluted Macbeth with the title of Thane of Glamis, the Thane of Cawdor, and also the King of Scotland. Seeing the overwhelmed state of Macbeth, Banquo asks him if he fears the prophecies of them, and later encourages them to speak about his future also if they can. The witches replied him to be lesser than Macbeth and greater, not so happy but much happier. They prophesied, though he would never reign, yet his sons after him should be the kings of Scotland. Then they vanished into the thin air. In the meantime, the messengers, Ross and Angus, came from the king and addressed Macbeth as the Thane of Cawdor, leaving him spellbound. This arouses the submerged wish of him to be the King of Scotland, which now seems to be coming true. Turning to Banquo, he enquires if he also hopes his sons to be the future kings. Banquo, doubting the instinct of the witches, warned him that these ministers of darkness tell us truths having double consequences. But Macbeth, blinded by his greed, paid no heed to Banquo's suggestions. Macbeth's wife, an ambitious woman, upon learning about the witch's predictions from her husband's letter, decided to fulfill them by any means possible. After Macbeth's return to the castle, she suggests him to murder King Duncan for fulfilling the wicked prophecies. That day, King Duncan visited the castle of Macbeth, Inverness, with his sons Malcolm and Donalbain, accompanied by other lords for a feast on Macbeth's success. Lady Macbeth welcomed him with a smile on her face, hiding her wicked purpose. Duncan, unaware about their intentions, praised her with the title of Most Kind Hostess. He also admired the beauty of Macbeth's castle. After the feast, the king, being tired with his journey, went early to bed in his stateroom with two grooms sleeping beside him as a custom. Later, during the night, when Macbeth, due to his fear, hesitated to commit the murder of the king, Lady Macbeth encourages him to perform the deed to fulfill their dream. She helped him by intoxicating the drunken sleepy grooms with wine and also tried to commit the murder herself. But due to her underlying womanly nature, she assumes King Duncan as resembling her father, which prohibits her from the heinous deed. Thus, with no option left, she determined to make her husband do the murder instead. Finally, rising above all his confusions and weaknesses, Macbeth, resolving to murder the king, went to his chamber. There, hallucinating a dagger hanging in the air with its needle pointed in his direction with blood drops, he realizes the graveness of his crime, though it could not refrain him to commit the crime. Finally, Macbeth kills King Duncan with his dagger. Killing him, Macbeth went to his wife to inform about such happenings. She, neglecting such imaginations, went to the king's chamber to stain the sleepy grooms with blood, so that it seems that the grooms did the murder. Next morning, after the discovery of the murder, Macbeth killed the grooms to prove his loyalty to the king. Though, instead of these, some lords suspect him. In the horror, King's sons, Malcolm and Donalbain, fled to England and Ireland respectively. In this opportunity, Macbeth was declared the King of Scotland. But Macbeth and his wife were not happy after getting the throne. They were always in fear that they will be exposed and will receive grave punishments. Thus, to make their life secure and not to let the prophecy about Banquo's lineage come true, Macbeth now tried to kill Banquo and his son Fleance. Though Banquo was killed by Macbeth's appointed murderers, Fleance escaped. Meanwhile, another feast was arranged in Macbeth's castle in his honor, where, with all the lords, Banquo was also invited. Macbeth knew that Banquo will be absent from the feast, as till then he would be murdered. But due to the guilt of the sins, his conscience betrayed him, and he hallucinated that Banquo was attending the feast with his gory locks of hair and ghostly appearance. Frightened by this, he lost his mental stability and misbehaved with the guests in the banquet. Witnessing this, Lady Macbeth comes to rescue and requests the guests to pardon their lord as he was not well. From this time, both of them lost their happiness, peace of mind, and start to spend sleepless nights. As Macbeth once said, "Sleep no more. Macbeth murdered sleep, the innocent sleep." With Fleance's escape, Macbeth and his queen feared that according to the witch's prophecies, their reign would come to an end with their death, as Fleance would be the next king if the prophecy comes true. Afraid of such thoughts, Macbeth went to visit the witches for the second time to know about his worst in future. He visited the cave of the witches, who mixed horrid ingredients in a cauldron to wake infernal spirits by the dreadful charms to answer the future of Macbeth, as they already knew about Macbeth's arrival. There, he was informed by the first apparition, an armed head, to beware of Macduff, the Thane of Fife. The second apparition, a bloody child, informed him to be bold, bloody, and resolute, for none of women born will be able to kill him. The third apparition, a crowned child, informed him that he shall never be vanquished until the great Burnham woods to the high Dunsinane hill shall come towards his castle. Hearing such insinuations, Macbeth assumed that he will live the usual period of a man's life and will not have to face a violent death. The witches also answered him that the posterities of Banquo should reign after him in Scotland. After this, the witches vanished, and Macbeth came to know about Macduff's escape to England from Lennox. Hearing this, Macbeth commands the murderers to ruin Macduff's castle and kill his family. These and such like deeds alienated the minds of all his chief nobility from him, who were ready to flee to join Malcolm and Macduff, but only for the fear of Macbeth. They could take no active part, though they secretly wished success to them. On the other hand, hearing about his family's slaughter, Macduff determined to take revenge against Macbeth, the tyrant, with Malcolm, the Sewards, and the English forces under Malcolm's command. While these things were happening, the Queen, who was the sole partner of Macbeth's wickedness, unable to bear the remorse of guilt and public hate, killed herself. Here, after taking oath to remove Macbeth, Malcolm ordered every soldier to hew down boughs of trees to hide their actual numbers, making them seem like the approaching trees of Burnham Woods from the high Dunsinane Hill. Witnessing the Burnham Wood coming from high Dunsinane Hill, Macbeth could no longer be confident and determined. He starts suspecting that there was a double meaning in the words of the devils and realizes that the devils tell lies while appearing to speak the truth. From this point, his courage and wish to live life left him, and he prepares himself for the war half-heartedly. On the arrival, he came out from his palace and attacked the English forces, killing young Seward. In the end, Macbeth faced Macduff and came to know that he was the person the witches warned him against, as Macduff was untimely ripped out from his mother's womb. Finally, witnessing his death approaching, Macbeth curses the deceiving devils that they shall not be believed anymore. In this fight, Macbeth was killed by Macduff, and his tyranny came to an end. In the end, Malcolm, the descendant of King Duncan and the real proprietor of the throne, was declared the next King of Scotland on the acclamations of nobles and thanes. Here we have come to the end of the video lesson. Here are the names of some of the books from which I have gathered information. Thank you. Goodbye. Meet you soon.